while we finished up and started going off into our groups, a couple more people trickled in. And so again, I'm grateful. I don't think it was an accident, so that's the good news. The bad news is it wasn't an accident, and that means it was something else. Yeah. And next week we come to a close, so we won't have to fight these Thursday people that are coming on the island for too much longer, at least for this time frame. So, but please do come next week so we can bring a close to the entire book of Romans. It's just been a lot of work. You've really worked hard, and I want to commend you on it. Were there any questions? I don't have any sheets in front of me. So any questions that came up in your conversations that you want? Oh, okay, I can come out to you, Nancy. That's good. Oh, good. All right. Yeah. So the question is, what if evil begins to infiltrate the church? Then it says, being non-judgmental towards the individuals that bring evil seems inappropriate. How do we respond to this? And that's really a great, there's more here, but let's start right here. Sometimes the argument is used, Romans 14 and other passages, judge not lest ye be judged, that there is no place for judgment within the church. And yet the reality is, and this is the distinction that is imperative, remember how Romans 14 started off. It says that judgment, it doesn't come from the servants, but comes from the master. So how does that work out in application? The application is, my opinion matters not. The opinion that matters is Christ. And so when I come to you as a peer, not above you. And so when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to you from the position of, what does Jesus think of this? And that right there changes the conversation, because all of a sudden we become common students, common servants to wrestle with. What does Jesus think? Now, I gave the examples of, pantsuits versus dresses. I didn't give the example of people who come to service, maybe, does anybody remember the period of the mini skirts? And does anybody remember the period of the, jeans that were so remarkably tight or dropping off of the hips? I didn't give that example because all of a sudden now we have to start getting into and asking the question, what do you think? I remember my pastor, it was a big stink in our church. I'm going to use the first name, not the last name, but a young lady named Lynn. She was 2 years older than I, and I had a teenage crush. And her sister, Lori, was in my class, and she made it a habit of coming to church with mini skirts that got shorter and shorter and shorter in the 70s. And the pastor actually denied her communion at the table. Oh my goodness, you would have, whoo, now the church is fighting. Now the church is fighting as sides, right? And of course, I was on Lynn's side. And my point of bringing this up is, how did that work out? I never got a date, if that's what you're wondering. Now, I say this, remember I talked to you about pantsuits. It doesn't stop with this. I could have brought up all kinds of ones, like what if you were to walk up here on Sunday and the person over here that is handing you the blood of Christ is a woman? We've actually had these conversations in this church family, in closed, protected places. I would suggest that it would do well for us to ask, what would Jesus think? Now, I have my opinion, you may have yours, and if my opinion and your opinion don't line up accurately, then we have to ask why they don't add up. And it's okay if they don't add up because my tradition says this and your tradition says that. It's okay. As long as we admit it, it's a tradition. A tradition that's grounded in our personal history and preferences. But where it often goes to is, well, there's no way Jesus would allow that. And that's when we start getting into a problem. So the simple answer to the question is, what about when evil comes in? And the truth is, Paul would tell us that we are called to actually bring God's truth to bear against everything, and that includes evil. So if this is not the Romans 14 conversation though, this is different preferences about, hey, I like to go to the church where the women are on one side and the men are on the other. How many of you, have we passed that era? I used to ask this question, and I would have people who were raised at a church like that. Anybody raised in that church? See, you clearly are not Midwest people. Go to Wisconsin. And there are people that were raised, they can still remember the men on one side and the women on the other. Okay. That's what Paul's dealing with. The challenge becomes, we jump to the position, well, you know, if women are on one side and men are on the other side, the men are going to all sleep. Well, how do you know that? Do you see how we jump to those and we start there and then we back? And that's a very poor argumentation reason. It's just like the one about, anybody watch the movie Footloose about dancing? Well, if you have dances, clearly there's going to be sex. Well, really? How do you walk back to that? There could be sex, but there could be sex whether there's dancing or not. So this is the challenge of being able to start as servants, students that ask, what is the Lord's will in this? The question goes on, and Kevin actually sent me a video that you might want to watch. It's called, don't remember. That's right, a letter to the American church. Interesting. I watched the video this morning. I thought of you, brother. You should watch it if you haven't. It's actually a movie, but it's all based off of a book. Fascinating. Basically, the premise of the author is that the American Christian church is walking down the same path of the German Christian church in the 1930s, early 30s. I haven't read the book. I haven't even seen the movie. I've just watched a little video interview. But the question is, so how many Christian churches in Germany chose to stay neutral before the war started? They did not stand up. Where does our church stand on our current evil? And my comment would be, our current evil, which evil? There are so many expressions of evil that we have to step back and ask ourselves, are we willing to, remember last week, we said in Romans 13, the church needs to be willing to speak the truth. The Christian needs to be able to speak the truth and then live with the consequences. Right? That you can say, I will not, it made national news. I'm only referencing something that made national news. A nurse said, I was told I would not have to participate in abortions. I cannot do this. My conscience will not allow. And then she was fired. I think it went all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, there you go. These are the challenging days in which we live in our country. Now, my goodness, there have been abortions through most of it's been sanctioned since the 1970s. So again, these are challenging. How do we live out the Christian life within the context of the reality in which we live? And what I would suggest to you is we go back to how we started today. I picked those hymns intentionally, not just ones that I thought you could sing. Did you know what both hymns had in common? Jesus. They were both focused on the person of Jesus. With the Lord begin your task. Jesus will direct it. The Christian life, according to Paul, is best defined on Jesus. The Christian family is best defined when we start the conversation is, okay, we're the servants, we're the students. Let's find out what the master, the teacher, says. Kevin, did you want to have a follow-up on that, or is that helpful? Yeah. Are there any other questions about this section? Well, I would tell you, if a church is going to be healthy, it's going to have to wrestle with these things, because we haven't even dealt with the generational changes. I mean, I made a little comment about, clothes, and God bless Lynn. I wonder where she's at. No, long before Mary. But I mean, seriously, what would we be willing to accommodate, give up for teens and 20s to pack this place? Pretty tough question, actually. What would we be willing to give up if we want to pack this place with the Latinos that I see coming from when I ride my bike down Gumtree? We are all very comfortable, and we choose churches where we are comfortable. That's just normal. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. Don't hear me as saying that we have to live out life uncomfortable. But what we do have to live out life is wrestling with our comfortableness. And how are we going to accommodate? And I would suggest to you that's hitting our congregation in spades. And I'll give you, before we close, this little example. On Easter, we are going to have 2 baptisms of adults. To have women, the age of these women who are not baptized, Our country, we're not talking about rebaptisms or second baptisms or something like that. We're talking about our dear sister Jo, who says, I don't know if I was baptized. I might have been. No record. For Jo, she is, I've always said that you were special. You are unique. I'm not kidding you. You probably have no idea how unique she is. People over 65 in this country were baptized in mass, whether they were part of churches or not. It was just the American thing. You were getting baptized. So she's unique. How many years of unique behavior? Yeah. So hold on a minute. Sits right over there is Yusha Wei. I think I've got it. Yusha Wei. Yusha Wei started coming with her daughter, Sharon, who is a teacher in the Beaufort school system. Sharon is here on a work visa. Sharon was baptized in this church with her daughter, Shirsaw. And those two were baptized, and then Simon wasn't ready, then Simon was baptized, the husband. And now, Yusha Wei, who doesn't speak a lick of English, and by the way, I speak no Chinese, but I love Chinese food. The Lord has been working on her heart. You say, how? Well, because Schwanzi, who has come to the Lord as an adult and is a very bright man and a beautiful Christian man and a wonderful Lutheran Christian man, has been translating the entire service every week. She sits over there and goes through the pages of the hymns in Chinese, all the readings in Chinese. If Kevin and I were good pastors, we'd have the sermons done by Thursday, and he could translate those as well. But she watches the screen, and I was with her for a couple hours last Sunday, and a lot of this from me. Like, I have no idea what they're talking about. And we went through the baptismal service. So here's the question. Do we do the baptisms together? Do we do the Chinese baptism in the worship service on Easter morning? Do we do the service in English? Do we do the service in English and Chinese? Well, I can tell you, because decisions have to be made. And we are having the services. I will ask the question, and Joe will politely wait while Schwanzi translates what I ask into Chinese, and then Joe will say, yes, I do, in her good old English. And the dear gal, Yusha Wei, will say her response. And I have found Chinese words seem to take more words to say the same thing, so it could take a while. And then Schwanzi's going to translate it probably. So what is this going to do? Expand the length of the baptismal. Are we willing to do this?
Are you going to finish your service?
This is why I love John here. I've decided we're not having one on Easter this year. Christ is risen. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we just got into one of those traditions. Do you say hallelujah or no hallelujah during Lent? But anyways, my whole point is, this is where the rubber hits the road. Are you starting to see how do we work together in the family? What are we willing to see as common ground? What's most important? And as we start to wrestle with that, then we don't have to shed it all off. I kind of think it's kind of cool to see the kids and the adults doing the acolyting thing here. We got rid of that in West Bend. It's not bad to have it here. It's kind of cool. We got rid of that in West Bend. Someday you might ask me why we got rid of that in West Bend. But you know, hey, I'm not that old crabby guy. I'm like, oh, okay, if you want to do it, that's a nice tradition. But we got rid of that in West Bend. And if we got rid of it here tomorrow, it wouldn't be the end of the world to me at all. But it's kind of nice. I love watching, and nobody's fallen yet, thank God. And no kids knocked over the candle yet. But that's all part of this. We have to learn how to be family together. Amen? Yeah, Sharon?
It seems like it goes along with it. If anybody hasn't seen Jesus Revolution, it's very appropriate to this.
Oh yeah, Jesus Revolution, that will get you going. Yeah, that will definitely rock your Chuck Smith and the whole, what happening. That'll get after it. Let's close in the family prayer, and we'll see you next week. Lord, remember us in your kingdom and teach us to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. All right, I'll hang around for a few minutes, but I'm kind of walking. I need our facilitators to meet me in my office. But if you wanted to just to grab me, feel free to grab me. Otherwise, I'll see you later.